All right, good evening, everyone. It's a little past 7, and we got quite a few folks on. Really appreciate everybody joining us tonight. We have a good presentation planned for you. Got a lot of things that you as anglers are going to be excited about. We're going to present on the different fisheries in the area, the outlooks, provide you with some science behind some of the things we're doing as well. And should be a good conversation and some good engagement between us and you as anglers. So thanks so much for being a part of this. We have a number of commissioners online. We have quite a few game and park staff as well, not only fisheries, but from a lot of our different divisions to help us out if there's questions that come up along the way. So we appreciate everybody being on, and we'll go ahead and get started. So just a quick reminder, this is the first of our district meetings that will be happening throughout the state this week. We'll go to the Southwest tomorrow night, Northeast on Wednesday, and then finish up with our statewide tour in the Northwest on Thursday. So if you're interested in those, follow the link just like you did to get to this meeting and register and attend those. A few things that I wanted to cover real quickly for the 2023 season. And I'm not going to hit on all these. This is a lot of information. I'm hoping everybody can pick up this new fishing guide for 2023 at any local game and parks office or bait vendor, those sort of things. A great piece of information to have in your tackle box in your boat, just along with you when you're fishing, to know the regulations and a lot of other information. So new for 2023, I'm just highlighting things that are either directly related to the Southeast District of the state or statewide. So we added no live bait fish waters in the Southeast District, our Standing Bear Lake, as well as Wagon Train State Rec Area and Wildlife Management Area. Those water bodies were added mainly to protect our investment in some renovations and rehabilitations that are going on in those water bodies. You'll learn more about those here real soon. Flanagan Lake, you'll learn a lot about this as well. We have a presentation that's kind of devoted to that as well. So we've implemented some new harvest regulations there, where we have some maximum length limits on bluegills and sunfish, as well as crappies. So you'll learn more about that here very soon. And then the orange highlight is more of a statewide thing. We've streamlined the process, simplified the process to get special fishing permits for disabled anglers, and then allowing for renewal online and in game and parks offices. So I wanted to highlight a few things here. We're hosting some youth fishing instructor workshops. A huge shout out, a big thanks to our volunteers that are already on board, have been with us for many years or just a few years. Youth fishing instructors are very beneficial to the Game and Parks Commission and our mission of trying to get folks out and recreating in a lot of different areas. We have certification events going on throughout the state. I've highlighted a couple here that are more in the southeast part of Nebraska. One later this week at Schramm Education Center, and then one in May at our Nebraska Outdoor Education Center. Contacting Larry Pape would be the way to go. Once again, these volunteers really help us out. We couldn't do all the programs, the community fishing events, the expos, the things with the schools and other areas without these individuals and these volunteers, and they're a huge help to us. So please check it out if you want to be involved. It's a great way to get introduced into kind of what we do as an agency and how we go about things. Another pertinent thing that I wanted to bring up is our spring trout stocking. We're in the midst of that right now. As we speak, we typically do this around mid-March. Obviously, our spring has been a little bit cooler on the cooler end, and we've had more ice out there through March. But we are starting to get fish in the water, and especially in areas that are urban areas that we're hoping to get novice folks out there, kids into fishing by conducting these trout stockings. A couple of stockings to note, at least in the southeast part of the state, are Holmes Lake has been stocked already, Halleck Lake over in Papillion, and obviously our Two Rivers trout program over there, which is a special event that has a lot of history. And then a whole lot of other smaller water bodies in and around different communities and urban centers. We celebrated our 25th anniversary of our Aquatic Habitat Program in 2022. It was a program that was implemented in 1997. And we did a couple of big celebrations because it was something that we thought was important for us as an agency and for our anglers to learn more about. And instead of me just rambling on about the program, I want to share with you a video that our team produced that really highlights the whys and kind of the benefits of this program. So I'll share it with you right now.
The slogan that we developed for the Aquatic Habitat Program was "New Life for Aging Waters." We simply wanted to improve living conditions for fish and all other water-oriented animals, go from a chocolate milk consistency and eroded shorelines to a clear water with some vegetation. So we sent a couple guys all over the state. We talked about specific water bodies that they were interested in seeing improved, got to talk about the problems, looked at solutions, broke them up into different districts. We did have a state senator present. He advised us of the steps that would be needed to create legislation. It passed the board of the legislature, and we started working in 1997 to improve aquatic habitat in Nebraska's waters. We were cutting edge, the nation's first aquatic habitat stamp. The program has been very successful. We're the envy of other states when it comes to funding source for aquatic habitat. Some people would ask, why did you need to have an aquatic habitat stamp? Why didn't you just increase the cost of the fishing permit? And I thought it was really important in the early years that we need to have a stamp that you had put on your fishing permit and sign your name across it so that you knew that there was something special there. In 2010, there was legislation passed that allowed us to use money to improve angler access, especially for shoreline anglers, including ADA. We built a lot of structures that allowed people to get directly from the shore right out to the improvements in aquatic habitat where the fish lived. We want to benefit boat anglers too, so there are structures that are out in the basin a ways that attract fish in the middle of the lake as well. I think one of the better things that we did was create sediment nutrient dikes. We put a dike above the reservoir so that the water coming in would lose its energy and settle the silt out above the dike, which could be removed every few years. The things that we did to lakes benefited more than fish. All different kinds of birds and animals benefited from lakes that, quite frankly, were more like a natural lake and less like a man-made lake. I think everybody likes clean water. Whether you fish or not, people just enjoy getting on water that looks good. We've had so many partners, hundreds of different organizations, cities, counties. A lot of people have contributed to this. It's pretty impressive when you see the spots on the map because nobody across Nebraska can say, well, they're not spending any money in my area. We've broadened the time between renovations, but with the inflows of flood water and silt, I doubt that there'll ever be a time when we would be able to say, well, we're done. I think it is time to celebrate, hold the program up where it belongs as one of the most innovative in the country. contributed to by a whole lot of people, and I can't be any prouder of it.
So yeah, hopefully that gave you a good idea, and hopefully most of you know about this program. I'm going to bring up a little bit something on some of the format of our presentation today. We're gonna provide some opportunities for some engagement with you, the angler, the participant of this meeting. So a poll question just launched. This is just an example of what we're going to do at certain breaks throughout the presentation, and it's just a way of us as an agency and as a fisheries division to gain a little bit more information about you, the angler, and the participant of this meeting. And then also during these breaks and during these, as we're polling the audience, as we were polling you, hopefully it's going to generate, and this will be a time to ask some questions that were just presented on within the information that was previously presented on. Hopefully we can continue a conversation, have these breaks to be able to provide answers to questions, pertinent questions about what information was just presented. So that's how it's going to go. And we're gonna try to hit questions along the way at these different breaks in between presenters to hopefully have more interaction in between and not do it all at the end. So please feel free at any point in time to actually pipe up through the Q&A. It's a pretty simple process here on the Zoom webinar to just click into Q&A and start typing your questions at any point, and we'll get to those at the appropriate breaks in time. So don't be shy. We're here as a staff to help out and answer questions as they come up. So we're just going to allow maybe a couple more minutes as people are answering these questions. We have quite a few questions rolling in, and then Jordan, our moderator, will pipe in and kind of share a few of the results, at least from this example poll that we've had. And this is something new that we're trying, that we'll just see how it goes tonight.
It looks like everybody's pretty much stopped voting there. So about a pretty even split on people that ice fished this last year. This was a kind of a usual winter for Nebraska, where we had a long ice fishing season pretty much across the state. Not a lot of bow fishers in attendance, only 2% that participated. And pretty much about 40-40 split on bank and boat fishing, and about 18% that were fished out of a canoe or kayak, and then other types of fishing were a pretty small percentage of the crowd.
Thanks, Jordan. And so that'll be kind of how we go about things as we move forward. And during these polling events, we're going to hopefully give that information back to you. And then also, if there's pertinent questions, we'll answer those at the time as well. So Jordan, did anything pop up here in the intro that would be worth pursuing right now? Or do you think we have spots further on in the presentation to hit them, and I can introduce Aaron?
Yeah, I think a lot of these are going to get, they'll be more timely after our staff has addressed the topic. So either a lot of these questions will either probably get addressed by certain individuals, or if they're not addressed during specific times, we'll get to them at the end of the top or the end of the night.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for popping those questions in, and continue to do that. And I guess I got ahead of myself. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Tony Barrett. I'm an assistant division administrator with our fisheries division. Guess I was excited to get this presentation going, and I'm going to hand it over right now to our Southeast District Supervisor, Aaron Blank, who's going to lead off the conversation with the Southeast District specifically. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. And kind of just to echo Tony's sentiments, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, and we love the interaction that we can have with you as our anglers, and just really appreciate you taking the time in the evening to come sit on here and listen to us. So with that being said, we're going to get to a little bit of an update of what's going on in the district. If I can get the screen to go here. There we go. So the Southeast District, you can see here, those are the counties that we have. And it's only about 5% of the surface water in Nebraska, but we have 65 to 75% of the state's population. So real high use areas. And we have the most regulated fisheries in the state because of this. So in all, we have somewhere between 140 and 150 water bodies. Everything in our district is man-made. So we got our reservoir systems, which would include basically all of our larger lakes, and then our sandpit lakes along the Platte River and a few other places, but no natural lakes in our part of the state that we control. I want to get started too real quick about aquatic invasive species. It's a problem that we battle across the state, not just in the Southeast District. AIS species can consist of fish, plants, crayfish, mussels, zooplankton, you name it. There's usually something that's not supposed to be here that when it gets here can cause massive problems. So in our district, our number one enemy, I guess you could say, is white perch. And we have them in a variety of different water bodies in the district. Branched Oak, Pawnee, where they were at Wagon Train until the renovation, Rockford, a few other places. But one thing I want to just let everybody know, we have not had white perch in the Omaha Metro for a long time. And 2 years ago, we sampled 2 white perch at Prairie Queen, which is a brand new reservoir that opened 2014-15. And this last year, we sampled white perch and a gillnet at Zarinsky. And so that invasion has moved a little bit east, and it's very concerning. So I just would ask everybody, get to know your species, what you're catching, what you're using for bait. If you shouldn't be using them in a lot of places anyway, but if you got white perch, you can't have it in possession live anyway by regulation. But if anybody sees any white perch in areas they're not supposed to be, to get a hold of a Game and Parks office, me personally, and just let us know so we can have that on the radar. Again, another one everyone's familiar with, zebra mussels. We got them in the Missouri River and also at the Base Lake in Omaha. And we did have a one positive veliger, which basically baby zebra mussels at Carter Lake. Never have confirmed an adult there and never had another positive sample. So we're pretty sure they're not in there. And we haven't seen anything at Cunningham again either since that drawdown. So one that you guys probably deal with, especially in the Omaha Metro a lot, are curly leaf pondweed and Eurasian water milfoil. These seem to be popping up across the district again. Curly leaf grows early, starting in under the ice conditions in February, and it can cover a whole lake. That's what you'll see a lot at Walnut Creek and Prairie View. that early vegetation's curly leaf pondweed. And then your Asian water milfoil, we're starting to find a little bit more across the state, but same tendencies. They just grows real thick, gets hard to fish around. And when it dies back, with both of these, when it dies back, we start seeing some algal blooms and having some issues with that. So as always, just make sure you clean, drain, and dry if you got a boat. Just take care of the stuff that you can control. Clean your boats, drain your live wells, try not to move vegetation from one lake to the other, and just try to control it the best we can. So one of the biggest projects in 2022 and still going 2023 is the rehab at Wagon Train Lake. So this all started as the sediment basin work. In the Aquatic Habitat video, you talked, or you heard them talking about the sediment retention cells that we started putting in. Wagon Train was one of the first ones where we built a new sediment retention cell. And so this whole thing started with a 20-year evaluation of how well this sediment retention worked, and it was almost completely full. So this project got started right away. We knew we needed to remove that sediment out of there. We're going to be taking around 110,000 cubic yards of sediment out of that basin, out of that sediment basin. It's important to know, without these sediment basins, that's 110,000 cubic yards of sediment that would have ended up in the reservoir had it not been for these structures. And so they're really important, but they're going to require some maintenance down the road. And as you know, especially in our Salt Valley area, we got a lot of sediment that likes to move. So just a few pictures of the guys out there working. That is all, the sediment retention stuff is almost done. They should be finished up here in the next month or so. And then along with that, well, I guess here's the plans. The old sediment retention structure, when they evaluated it, we did notice there was an area on this north side that wasn't catching the sediment like it should have. And so we kind of re-engineered this. So there's going to be a new dike that sticks up, moves that water in and around, and then it'll go through cell 1 into cell 2 and then down into the lake. So we just try to slow that water down the best that we can and let that sediment fall out before it gets to the lake. There's also going to be a new boat launch facility. This includes a boat ramp and a boat dock, and then also a mooring dock. You can see kind of pictured here. This should help quite a bit. That ramp needed some work, as well as a dock, and those mooring docks seem to be used quite a bit in some of our newer lakes like Conestoga. We also took advantage of the low water that the lake was basically lowered about 8 to 12 foot in the last year. And so with that, we were able to do some in-lake habitat. There was 30 vegetation barriers that were put along the shoreline. These just help control, if we get clear water, control some of that vegetation, open it up for our shore anglers. And then we also did put in 30 rock shoal structures. So these are about 10 by 10 yard areas with large riprap on them. They're elevated. They should be in anywhere from about 6 foot to 4 foot below the water along the edges. And then after those were placed in there, we were able to having trouble getting my slides going here. We were able to put in some cedar trees and enhance some of those too. So you can see on the picture on the left side, that's one of the shoals that was just made. And then we were able to go in, stick some cedar trees on it and around it, just kind of make that area a little bit more fish friendly. And then we also took some of the existing structures that were in the lake bed and tried to throw some cedar trees around it. Jensen's going to talk a little bit more about this later too. And we stocked fish in there last year, and we've this is what the species composition we've got in there right now. So we got channel catfish, bluegills, crappies, largemouth bass, muskies, and sawguys. And so we'll be starting to evaluate that come spring again when we can get a boat in, see how those fish are doing, and we'll have some other stockings going in as well. Standing Bear Lake, I did see a question popping in about Standing Bear. So the lake was drawn down in December to facilitate this project. And it's almost completely dry right now, that just the creek flow is going through the reservoir. And this is kind of another aquatic habitat project. And we're gonna do some similar work that we did at Wagon Train here. So there will be some work at the boat launch facility. So we'll be putting in a new double ramp, also a kayak launch on the south side, as well as working on some trails and doing some repavement work in the parking lot there. And there'll also be a breakwater that's going to be to the west of the boat launch facility, just to protect that from the wind. And then on the north side, we're going to be working mainly on angler access. So we're going to be putting some angler access nodes, basically little rock bump outs along that north shoreline, and going to be adding some depth around those, just so our shore anglers have some deeper water to fish there. And then while the reservoir's low, we'll take advantage of that this summer. There's plenty of cedar trees around Standing Bear. And if everybody's been out there recently, you can see there's not a lot of habitat left in that lake, other than a few breaks is about all we have for structure. So we're going to be trying to do some brushing event out there this summer, get some cedar trees in, and then do some of those same underwater shoals that we had at Wagon Train. The fish stocking will start this year, this summer, fall. Largemouth, bluegills, crappies, channel catfish, and walleye are planned to be stocking there this year. Another question I seen come in was on Portal Reservoir. So everybody's probably driven by it. I know there was a lot of excitement for it, and there was a lot of excitement in the district for the lake. And you can kind of see here the different views that we've had here in the last year and a half. The picture to the far right would be the highest elevation, water elevation that we had. Would have been about a year and a half ago. And the middle picture was this winter. And so, or this fall, winter, and you can see there's a lot of difference in elevation. And so we've been working with the NRD and a engineering firm, and they've been doing some evaluation on these water levels, and kind of what they're thinking, what we're thinking. Part of it is we just built this thing, unfortunately, just right before a drought, a pretty big drought. And so one of the things to look at on this graph, the main things to look at are this top black line. That would be the lake elevation in feet. And then these blue lines are the precipitation events. So essentially, we lose about a half an inch right off the bat, just as that water soaks in across the neighborhood. The next half inch is captured by sediment water basins in the neighborhoods. That captures about a half inch of an initial rainfall too. And so when you look at that off of this line, there's not a lot of days in the last year and a half where we caught much precipitation there. And so what is believed to be happening is as a lake, a new reservoir fills up, as the water comes up, it still gets a lot of pressure. And so it has to shoot to the side to fill what they call a water mound until you get equilibrium, on the sides of the reservoir. As that water fills up and the sides fill up, then you start to maintain water. And so what we think happened was on this initial surge, water came up. We lost water through the drought, but we also lost water around the sides of the lake. And so what we're really hoping for this spring is some good spring rains, fill that thing up, and then we'll be able to evaluate that a whole lot better. I know we get a lot of questions about Big Elk and Portal being, so close together. Big Elk's been spilling over the overflow almost the entire time. And the only thing, what we were talking about the only thing that's happening there is it's just got a lot better spring fed watershed to it. And so that's pushing out a lot more water through that watershed, where Portals, it's not very far away. It's just the composition and the hydrology in that watershed is just different. And so we're going to continue to evaluate it. It's definitely on our radar. We wish it was full, just like a lot of the anglers, I'm sure, do. But we do have one of the engineers that's working on it on the meeting today. So if we get some questions about it too that I can't answer, I'll have Mike jump in. I appreciate him being here too. Lastly, then I'll push it off to my guys. Just a few new reservoirs that the Papio NRD is planning on building here in the next 2 to 3 years. Hopefully they'll be done by then. WP4 looks like it'll probably be one of the first ones to go on. That's kind of in town in Gretna, and that should be starting to work on maybe this fall. WP2, which is just a little bit northeast of Gretna, should be in the works too. And then WP1 would be probably the last one that's going to be coming on, and that is essentially, it's just kitty corner to the southwest of Flanagan Lake. All of them will be smaller lakes. That's typically what we're going to see, more in that Big Elk Portal size is what's to be, expected. But it's always nice to have new waters. So with that, we can get into some more the questions, Tony.
So it should have launched another poll, and while everybody's kind of working on that, Aaron, we got a few questions I'm gonna throw your way. So kind of all over the board here. You spent some time talking about area lake renovations and asking about adding kayak launches to every one of those products or projects. Talk about kind of how we go about deciding when to add a kayak launch and what goes into those decisions.
Yeah, and I'd say lately on a lot of our renovations, almost all of those have got some kayak access to them. It's always going to be a little different lake by lake and what we got for funding and where we can do it and how it works out. But that's one thing that's really changed here in the last 5 to 10 years with the increasing amount of kayak fishermen. And, we try to do it when we can, just so we can avoid some of that boat ramp confusion between kayakers and boaters and the arguments that can come from it. But a lot of our Omaha lakes, we've been trying to do a lot better. We have another one project that we just did or we're going to be doing at Wildwood, where we're adding a kayak launch with the NRD. So I would say that's something that's always in the back of our mind that we're always looking forward doing. Another one that we hear about a lot, and it really hasn't came about a whole lot till the last year or two, would be ice fishing access on some of those parking lots and areas where guys pull their sleds down. And so all of that stuff in the future, we continue to learn as we do these renovations on what we can improve on and what our anglers want. So appreciate the feedback, and we're going to continue to do our best to have access for those kayakers, canoers.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Another one here. You talked about different, the white perch showing up in Omaha. Although gizzard shad aren't necessarily classified as an aquatic invasive species in your district, they're definitely a detriment to many of your waters. Are you aware of the gizzard shad in Lawrence Youngman? And what are your comments and thoughts on that?
Yeah, we started sampling gizzard shad in there about 2 years ago, was when we first noticed them. Anybody who's fished the lake probably this winter, I'm sure, has seen the clouds of shad in there. And it is, so they're, gizzard shad, there's a time and a place for them. In our large reservoirs out west, they do great. Our small reservoirs on this side of the state, they end up having that direct competition with everything, essentially our bass, bluegills, crappies. At young ages, there's direct competition. And anybody who's seen gizzard shad on a depth finder or anything like that, the amount of fish that there are. And so that biomass just leads to more competition. They can also degrade water quality. And so having those at Youngman is a really big concern. And that's something we'll be continuing to monitor, that fish population through time. And those are always what I always kind of talk about, and what I've told a lot of anglers is when you get one problem species in a lake, sometimes it can be managed around. And we've done that at a variety of lakes. Now, if somehow white perch would show up in there and you get white perch and gizzard shad, when you start getting 2 or 3 problem species, you really, really start to see the decline of sport fish really go quick. And so it's one of these, every time we see new invasions, we always go into a monitoring phase, know when those fish came in, and we watch how those sport fish populations respond. And then we'll make management decisions down the road based off of how we see those fish responding.
Along those same lines, you talked about white perch and knowing what you catch, what you have. If somebody catches a white perch, what would you advise them to do with it?
Well, if it's big enough, I'd keep them and eat them. And they're a good fish to eat. You got to make sure if you do decide to keep one, if you're in possession of it, it needs to be dead immediately. It's illegal to possess live white perch. So even if you got them in your live well, you're going to take them home. Best thing to do is bring a cooler. If you think you're going to catch them, or your spot you're going to catch them, bring a cooler of ice and put them on ice and go from there. There's not really an impact if you're catching small fish. There's no point really in killing them and just throwing them over the side of the boat. There's the numbers that are in these reservoirs. Once those white perch are established, you can't remove enough fish to make an impact. So the biggest thing is don't move the darn things around alive, and make sure you know what you're catching all the time. I know we have a few white bass on this side of the state, and we hear that mix up a lot, and they're really tough to tell apart when they're in that 2 to 3 inch range. So always know what you're catching and have a plan for what you're going to catch. So.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Aaron. Still got a lot of good questions coming in. I think a lot of these will be better addressed either with some of your staff coming up or later in the meeting. Quickly gonna touch base here on the poll results, which should be up for everybody to view. We got mostly bass and panfish anglers in the audience. And where everybody fished in the Southeast District is really great information. Lot of Saw Valley and anglers. Just kind of trying to scroll through here quick. Unfortunately, Zoom doesn't tabulate those short answers for us, so we're just kind of scrolling. But a lot of Lincolnites, it looks like, or at least fishing around Lincoln. And then surprisingly, or at least for folks in the audience, not using forward-facing sonar tonight. It's about 83% are not using live scopes, active targets, that sort of technology tonight. So that's who we have tonight.
I think you're muted, Jensen.
All right, I'm here now. Yeah, just wanted to make sure here. All right, so that takes us into some of the brushing projects and artificial structures that we put in the Southeast District here this year that Aaron briefly mentioned about. We'll get into a little bit more depth here with them. So to start things off, we have two main types of structures that we've been putting in lakes. And one on the right-hand side of your screen there is new to this last year, these artificial structures. So these are made out of PVC, a 5-gallon bucket, and concrete. And we were fortunate enough to come across some of this PVC pipe that all of it was donated from someone in our district. So we were able to save a little bit of cost in building these structures. So we had the unique opportunity to place these in branched oak this year. I think we placed around 171 of these structures, but traditionally we do a little bit more of our cedar tree brush piles. And so this kind of just showcases the difference between the two. These cedar trees, you tend to have a little bit more complexity, especially with all those needles. When they fall off, you have a bunch of small branches and a little bit more area for fish to hide. But these PVC structures kind of provide a unique opportunity for fishermen. They're easier to fish around. You don't get snagged as much, and fish are still attracted to them. But there are a couple downsides to those PV structures, though. They're a little bit more expensive. So even though that we got those PVC tubes donated to us, we still had to buy the concrete and the 5-gallon buckets. And that cost alone outweighs what we do with cedar trees, which is just a cinder block and some wire. So they're still a little bit more expensive, even though we're getting them at a pretty good discount with that PVC tube, getting that for free. You can see that in the picture on the right, we have a picture of a tall structure. And then in the next slide here, this is a picture of what would be the short structures. So we really only had the opportunity to build two different types just to save on time and reduce the complexity of building for us. With cedar trees, we have a little bit more opportunity to kind of distribute the size of our tree piles. It's dependent on what size of tree we cut and how many we put in a pile. So you have a little bit more freedom to do some different types of brushing there. And then I think the big thing for us is the time commitment. We'd love to put some more of these PVC structures in if we can, but it's a lot more intensive effort. It took us about a week of prepping and building these structures with about 20 different volunteers to put in about 170 structures at Branched Oak. Whereas we had some good volunteers from the Nebraska Bass Federation this year at Wearspan. In one day, we were able to cut and place about 200 cedar trees. And so you just look at the time investment there, and there's definitely a use case for both. But traditionally, I think we tend to do the cedar tree brush piles. There's a difference in longevity, though. So those PVC tubes, they obviously aren't going anywhere. It's a permanent structure. So once we place them, they're in the water body. And those cedar trees, they last about 20 years. So when we were doing our renovation this year on Wagon Train, the last time it was renovated was about 20 years ago. And there was still some cedar trees that, although they were breaking apart and a little worse for wear, they were still providing some structure in the lake. But so we made sure to add some more this year, though, part of that reservation or renovation. So that takes us to the next slide. Here's some pictures again. So these are the short structures, and you can kind of see what these look like when they're all grouped up here. Typically when we place these in, they're in nodes of 4 or 5 different structures kind of placed close to each other, just to provide some structure for fish to swim around and hide in. And then here's a picture of what some cedar tree placement will look like. So this is, I believe, out at Wagon Train. So you can see how much coverage we can get between the 2 different types of structures, the 2 designs. So, and that takes us into what lakes we were able to hit this year. So here's Meadowlark Lake. So we got some pictures here on the left-hand side of where those cedar tree piles were. And then we got a list of the lat long and how many trees were placed at that lat long location. So we tend to group these up in areas that fishermen can target instead of sporadically placing them. Again, they're there for people to fish and for fish to use. So we try and put them around different structures around the edges of the lakes that people can access them. But you can see we got some out in the middle of the lake too for those people fishing from boats as well. But that's out at Meadowlark. We have about 21 trees placed. It's a smaller reservoir, so we didn't need to go crazy like we did at Wagon Train over the last 2 years. But that's Meadowlark. And then here we have red cedar. Again, some pictures of what those cedar tree piles look like on top of the ice. And here we had a few more trees, about 29 trees. Again, these are the lat long locations. Some of them have a couple trees placed on one location, but these are the groupings at red cedar. And then Timber Point, here we added 37 trees. These were a little bit smaller trees, so we were able to add a few more in with what block we had available, but there's a couple really big trees that we put in there. You can see we blocked these and grouped them up pretty tight with one another. Again, that adds something for you guys to target when you guys go out there at Timber Point. So I think that'll be good this year. And then here's one of the doozy projects we did over the last 2 years. So over 650 cedar trees were placed in Wagon Train over the last 2 years. Here at the north end of the lake, we have that old stump pile. There used to be trees that were poking out of the water. They've over the years kind of been reduced to stumps. So we went ahead and re-added some cedar trees over here, and you can see just how stacked those are. It really adds a lot good structure and habitat, maybe some crappie spawning habitat and that sort of stuff. But then on the south end of the lake along the dam here, kind of by the boat ramp, we had a bunch placed in as well. And then we also placed them along the rock jetties that we are adding and that stuff too. That way we have cedar trees structure for people to fish all over Wagon Train. So we're really excited for this lake to fill back up. I think it's going to be a really good fishing lake, especially with all the work we've done over the last 2 years with the renovation and our brushing projects here. There's definitely a lot of trees in this lake. So here's another lake, Wearspan. This is the one I mentioned earlier with the help of the Nebraska Bass Federation, a good volunteer event. We're able to help us drag some cedar trees out on the ice here. You can see there's this old road bed going through the middle of the lake here, and we pretty much coated that whole road bed with cedar trees. But I think this map doesn't do a great representation of how many we placed out here. We have over 200 in the lake. Again, some of these piles we have so close, and each point is representative of one tree on this map. So you can see that it clouds it up a little bit, especially along that road bed and then on the north side of the lake and along some of these bays here. But that's another one we're really excited about. It was a good project and we had some good help with some volunteers. So it worked really well. And we'll talk a little bit about branched oak here. We had the 2 different brushing events I talked about earlier. These are our cedar tree placements here. And we stuck to these 2 north bays at branched oak for both these brushing events. That's where a lot of people end up fishing anyhow. And it's a good addition of structure in these bays for people to target as well. The north end of these bays hold a lot of fish here. And I know that's where a lot of our flathead sampling takes place, as well as off of these old cedar tree piles we had in there. So this was a good addition, and you can see the overlap here with our artificial structures. So these were actually placed first in the year, whereas our red dots, they were indicative of one single tree placement. These are a little bit different. That's a group of artificial structures. So each one of these dots has about 4 or 5 structures placed on them, and they range from short to tall. We have that information available on our website, I believe. But these artificial structures are going to be really cool, allow some really neat opportunities for people to fish, especially off these dikes here that we were able to put in. But I'll go back a slide here just so you can see the comparison of where we put some of these cedar trees as well. A lot of the same areas we hit, and then the Northwest Bay here, we were able to put some out in the middle of the bay. So some good projects that we were able to do with a bunch of volunteers this year. Went really well. That takes me across from brushing to one of our new lakes in the district, the Big Elk recreation area. Aaron mentioned a little bit earlier about Portal, so I'll just touch on Big Elk because this was the one we were able to sample in this last year. But a little bit of background information here. This is a top-down view of what the watershed looks like. So I'll highlight the watershed. It's a pretty small watershed. It's a pretty unique area. Here we have Big Elk and Portal highlighted, and here's the stream that runs through and feeds both those reservoirs. We had a unique situation where this was a small watershed and it was clean. We had one pond up above Portal here that had some fish in it, but it was clean. It didn't have anything, no invasive species, no common carp, that sort of thing. So we saw this as an opportunity to create a unique fishery for the Omaha area, metro area, have some smallmouth bass and yellow perch. So that's what we stocked them with, was those two there. But here we have a top-down image of Big Elk here. It filled in nice, and we have nice clear water. You can't quite see it, but in this top left-hand corner and top right-hand corner, the imagery is actually kind of interesting. We caught our trap nets when we were out sampling this year, so it was kind of neat to see. But take us into what fish were stocked. So here we got some pictures of us when we went out there and were able to enjoy it ourselves a little bit. But we threw in 11,222 yellow perch and then 1,431 smallmouth bass. This includes adult transfers of the smallmouth as well. And we had good results with it. We observed healthy perch and bass in 2022. Here's some pictures here. This is smallmouth. This is a plump yellow perch we were able to catch. And when we first went out there and we were sampling, there was just clouds of fathead minnows everywhere around the lake. You could practically walk on them. They were so thick in there. So those yellow perch were eating well. But about all those fathead minnows are gone now. They they had their snacks and they're full. But so we might not see as crazy growth as we had this last year. We had a yellow perch up to 11 and 12 inches. And so I think that had a lot to do with the fathead minnows we had in the district, in the lake there. So, and this is a picture of one of the adult transfers we had over there. We were able to sample as well. And again, a healthy fish. Here's some more pictures of the yellow perch. And then in our trap nets, we had just a huge amount of tadpoles. So there was a bunch of tadpoles of bullfrogs out there as well that the fish had the opportunity to snack on. But this year, the ice season got hit hard. We had heard from some of our game wardens in the area. It was like Swiss cheese out there through the ice. So I think people had good success catching fish out there. And I think anglers are really happy. We're excited to see where this goes. We're excited to have this in our district. And we're going to evaluate this for the next 4 years here and seeing how the fish populations and our growth rates are doing. So something that I think we're all pretty excited about in our district. With that, I'll take some questions and polls.
All right. So hopefully there you go. Next poll should be up and running. We got a few questions that have been marinating here for a little while that I'm gonna throw your way, Jensen. So one of the first questions of the night was talking about branched oak, which you guys did a pretty extensive project out there, trying to improve some habitat in those bays. Along with the habitat improvements, are there any plans to do any stocking out there? The question asked specifically about largemouth bass, but I'll open it up to any other, I'll say predator stocking.
Yeah, we do some stockings every year. I'd have to look at our list here of what we've requested for the following year. But we've actually, just to touch on the largemouth bass, I think Jake and Matthew will touch on this in a little bit. We've put together a black bass management committee this past year, and so we're kind of looking at some different regulations and maybe different stocking rates and all sorts of different things related to black bass that might have an effect. So I'm sure we'll look at branched oak and see if that's a district lake that we can address with some of those concerns. But it is on our stocking list, and we do hit that. So, but Jake and Matthew might hit on that a little bit later with the largemouth bass.
All right. Very
I
good.
I can jump into Jordan right now. Right now, there's no plans for any, like in the near future, any supplemental bass stockings out there. From what we heard from our bass anglers, there was a pretty good, must have been a hatch 2 or 3 years ago. The guys I talked to during that brushing project said they were catching a lot of 8 to 10, 12-inch fish. And so what we're doing with those cedar trees is one, yeah, if we can enhance the bass habitat in those bays and we can get some natural reproduction in there, great. Part of the other reason is on those is for our crappies and our flathead catfish. And so anybody who's fished branched oak in the last 10, 15 years has seen the amount of habitat that was created in the early 2000s and then the amount of habitat that's been lost here in the last 10 years. And so we're just trying to bring a little bit of that back and that shoreline, near shore habitat and hopefully see some results from it.
Thanks, guys. Jensen, you touched a little bit or quite a bit on the big elk fish community. Do you guys have any idea on what's left in Portal? I know, Aaron, you talked about the water levels there as well, but any idea on what's left?
We had some good reports of people actually making the trek through the mud down there and fishing this last year. And then I think some people even hit it through the ice and they were having success. They were catching fish. But we weren't able to launch a boat and evaluate it this last year just due to the water conditions. So we're praying and fingers crossed for rain, and we're putting that on the docket to evaluate this next year. And hopefully we can see and assess what's in there. But I think it's Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong too. I think we have about 16 foot of depth in that creek channel still. It's about 9 to 10 right now. 9 to 10 right now.
We lost about 6 foot between the last year and this year. But yeah, guys caught perch all winter out of there, and I'm sure there's still smallmouth in there. We have enough depth. I don't think we would have winter killed. If we would have had a bunch of snow this year, I'd have been a little more concerned. But I think, I think we still got perch and smallmouth in there. But like Jensen said, till we get enough water to actually sample it, it's kind of a hope and wait, and all of those get supplemental stockings for perch every year. So we'll have those on the docket again if we can get the water in there.
Okay. When it comes to kind of the habitat additions using either cedar trees or the PVC stuff, have you guys looked at using rock piles as cover and kind of some of the decision making that goes into using those different cover types?
Yeah, we don't necessarily add those outside of renovations to my knowledge, but part of our aquatic habitat program with our renovations, that's something that's definitely looked at and added. And you can see that at Wagon Train. Aaron touched on that a little bit earlier with the addition of those veg barriers and rock piles and rock jetties. Those were all added in there in addition to what we did with our brushing projects. That's pretty typical when we do our renovations. It's an aquatic habitat renovation as well, and those structures are definitely added.
All right. Here's one for you guys. Also, is it legal for an individual to go out and place those attractors on a public body of water? Or what do they need to, how do our anglers need to go about doing that?
I might deflect that one to Aaron here.
Yep. Yeah, so, and that's okay. I should mention to everybody too, Jensen's only been at the district for less than a year, so he's still learning a little bit, every day about the Southeast District. But to jump into that, yeah, we don't really want people, it's illegal to just go out and throw stuff in. What the best route is, if there's something that a lake that you're interested in adding habitat to, or something that you're passionate about, get a hold of your district manager. So if you're in the southeast part of the state, you want to get a hold of me, email. And we work, the branched oak stuff kind of came about through the guy who donated some of the PVC, and it was an area that he wanted to fish a little bit. And so we put together a project, and that's something that we've done other times too. We work with the Bass Federation every year, do a project, and so there's appropriate ways to go through it, but we can't really just have people adding stuff that we don't know about. So.
All right. Back to kind of the structures themselves when using PVC as those habitat types, are those environmentally friendly, and do they leach anything into the water?
There's still a lot of research being done on leaching of PVC into the watershed. A lot of it has to do with how deep a structure is placed, if it's being hit by sunlight, that sort of thing. And so that's not a huge concern with a lot of our structures. They're placed in deep enough water that the sun rays aren't going to penetrate through the turbid water. And so we felt that it was an opportunity that we got this PVC for free, and we're gonna try and add some of this structure in instead of it hitting the landfill. But there's plenty of ongoing research right now about the leaching of PVC and the addition of microplastics into our watershed. But I think a lot of it is circulated around UV rays breaking that PVC down. And since we don't necessarily flirt with that with the depth of them placed and the turbidity of water, I don't believe we'll have much of that happening in our district lakes.
Thanks, guys. Again, a lot of good questions coming in. We'll get to everything else later in the presentation or at the end of the talks. Let me pull these poll results up to share to the audience here. As far as which fish attractor types does everybody try to or prefer? Vast majority prefers cedar trees. Let's see, which area do they? Well, it's kind of all over the board as far as where they're looking for new projects. So we'll try to summarize some of that and maybe get back to that question as far as where we're looking for fish attractors and habitat projects. And then how likely are you to fish the added structures in area lakes? Pretty overwhelmingly, our anglers seem to like those and are going to fish those in the future. So with that, we'll keep moving on.
right, so I'm gonna talk about the Flanagan regulations that were put in place and started on January 1st of this year. So to start off, there's a 10-inch maximum length limit on crappie, and that means that any fish or any crappie that you keep must be 10 inches or less. For bluegill and red ear sunfish, there's an 8-inch maximum length limit on them. And that again is they must be 8 inches or less to be able to harvest. And there's still that 15 fish aggregate bag limit on there. And so a lot of questions we get is, what is the purpose behind this regulation? What are we trying to accomplish? And in short, we're trying to promote a trophy pan fishery at Flanagan Lake. And these regulations, these maximum length regulations are kind of weird, not very common. In fact, for panfish, this is an incredibly novel regulation that's been put in place. As far as we know, it's the only one in the US for panfish. And there is one, I believe it's going to be put into effect in Canada coming April 1st up in Manitoba. Theirs is a 12-inch maximum length limit. Ours is a 10-inch maximum length limit. So how we want this to kind of work in our lake is, if we look at this graph, this is, I'm using crappie as an example here, but it'll be kind of the same thing for our bluegill and our red ear sunfish. This graph kind of represents what we typically see in our southeast reservoirs, where fish tend to stack up in that 8 to 10 inch range, with a few pushing forward into that 10 to 12 and some getting bigger than that. But that 8 to 10 inch range tends to be a growth bottleneck in our lakes, where they stack up and not many push into those bigger lengths. And what we typically see, or some of the trends in our anglers who do participate in select harvesting, is they tend to harvest those fish off of the upper end of these reservoirs. And so what that does is it decreases the amount of those faster growing fish that can push past that growth bottleneck. And it actually ends up promoting more fish to be stacked up below that bottleneck. So you have these fisheries that are high density bluegill and crappie fisheries that don't get much size to it, except for the occasional few that move on and are able to push past that. But once again, those faster growing fish are then harvested out at a higher rate than those slower growing fish. So what we did is we put this 10-inch maximum regulation on, where once again, you have to put any fish over that 10-inch line back in, or for bluegill and red ear sunfish over that 8-inch line in. And what that does is it'll shift our pressure or our harvest from those larger fish onto those smaller fish. And so this kind of has a twofold effect. And so with our harvest being put on those smaller fish, what it does is it removes those smaller fish from the population. And those smaller fish, once again, are typically where most of the population tends to bottleneck. That's the most of them out there. And so by harvesting those fish, you reduce the density, and by reducing the density, you reduce competition amongst them. And it allows those fish to hopefully have more resources to use and to grow bigger. And the second prong of this is it keeps those bigger fish, or those fish over the 10-inch in the population, to hopefully propagate and pass on those faster growing genetics. And so the end goal for what we want this to look like, instead of being a bottom heavy distribution of those size lengths, hopefully it'll promote something that looks more like this, where you have more of a balanced distribution here, and we get more of those fish to stay in the population that are bigger. And the whole idea is to create a fishery where you can go and regularly catch fish that are above 10 inches, maybe even 12 inches or more. But in order for this regulation to work, what we need from you guys is we need harvest. If we don't have enough harvest on this lake, this regulation probably won't work. So I'm encouraging people who do go and fish Flanagan to keep a limit of bluegill and crappie, legal limit that is, and help us out with hopefully pushing this lake to where we would like it to be. And with that, we'll be evaluating it for the next 5 years. We'll go out there every year and we'll collect bluegill and crappie and look at growth on the lake and look at size structure in the lake. And we'll also be comparing this to prairie queen. It's a kind of a cool opportunity where they're both pretty much brand new reservoirs. They both have similar species composition and structure in them. And they both have pretty similar structure in them. Even though Flanagan's a little bit bigger, it's not quite a perfect control, but it'll be a good comparison to see how how these regulations impact our fishery. So moving on, we do have northern pike in there, and there's a catch and release on all northern pike. There's several reasons behind this. One of them is that northern pike tend to be more catchable than tiger muskie or pure muskie, meaning that they're more susceptible to angling pressure. So if there was a harvest regulation on there, they could be pulled out of there at a faster rate than tiger muskie or pure muskie. Real quick, I do want to give a shout out to our hatcheries. If anybody didn't see, they are doing an incredible job. Last year, they kicked out more than 30 million fish to be stocked out, which is just incredible. But unfortunately for northern pike, they tend to be a little more difficult to raise in our hatcheries, even more so than tiger muskie or pure muskie. So with that, we don't get nearly the return that we do on the tiger muskie and the pure muskie. And some of that is partly due to when we spawn the northern pike. You know, like last year we had that yo-yoing spring where we had huge temperature swings. That can have an effect on the quality of our eggs and how well the fish do once they're brought to the hatchery. But also we do have to continually stock these fish into the lake, just because both in Flanagan and in Wanahoo, we've documented very little, if any, natural recruitment in these lakes. Even though every year they do try and spawn, if there are any that are successful in hatching, there's little evidence that they actually recruit to the population. So sustaining it through natural reproduction is pretty unlikely. So therefore it has to be sustained through stocking. Once again, I just want to hit that this is a no live bait fish lake. Once again, it's to reduce the chances of invasion of any aquatic, invasive, or nuisance species. Once again, our big hitters are common carp, gizzard, shad, and white perch. And then for bass, there's a 21-inch minimum length limit on largemouth bass, meaning that they must be 21 inches or more to harvest. And the purpose of that regulation is to promote a high-density bass fishery to reduce the abundance of our panfish. And as Jensen mentioned earlier, we do have a black bass management committee that was just put in place where we'll be looking more into the black bass regulations statewide, not just in Southwest East, but this is a statewide committee. And some of the need behind this committee is we'll be looking at varying management goals throughout the state and see what our anglers want, what lakes can produce different fisheries for our goals that we want. But in order to do this, we do need some information on age and growth. And typically for bass, we have been taking scales to age these fish, but there's been some current research that has shown that scales might not be the best structure to get accurate age and growth information off of. So what we did is this last year is we went around to, I think, 9 of our lakes and harvested bass from them to compare different aging structures. Some of the structures we took were otoliths. Otoliths are ear bones in the fish, and in many fish species, these are the best structures to age on. They're the most precise and accurate structure, but unfortunately, you do have to kill the fish to take it. So we want to look for aging strategies or aging structures that we don't have to kill the fish to collect, like scales. So we looked at otoliths in comparison to scales, dorsal spines, and anal fin spines. And so just so everybody here can kind of see what these look like, what we're looking at when we do age them. Here are some pictures of these aging structures from one single fish that we did collect. I don't have the picture of the scales. Those are used on a different reader that I can't get a picture of. But in the top left corner, we have a sectioned otolith. This is a 0.5 millimeter thick section that we then put under a light and view through a microscope. And it's just like counting the rings on a tree. You count the rings on the otolith there, and that tells you how old it is. And in this case, since we sampled it in the spring, we do count the edge as the last annuli. So this is a 4-year-old fish. And we can see in the anal fin spine and the dorsal spine that they were pretty good surrogates as well. We get 4 years old off of them, whereas the whole otolith gets a little cloudy and we can't quite see the rings quite as clearly on this structure. In this graph, I'm not going to get too into the weeds on it. Essentially, the closer those dots are to each other and the closer they follow that dashed line, the better the structure is. for aging precision and for bias reasons. And so far, it looks like scales might be the best structure that we can use. So that's promising. We are looking into a little different methodology for the anal spines and dorsal spines for lighting that might boost their reader precision and accuracy. So we're continuously working on bass as well. They aren't being forgotten by any means, but we're moving forward with this research, and we're going to be going forward with some more stuff on the largemouth bass end of things. With that, we'll go into some questions in the polls.
Next poll question should be launching here right now. We got some good questions for you, Jake. Lot of interest around the Flanagan regs, as you can imagine, especially as that hit after the first of the year. So let's see. A lot of people just curious about it, and really a lot of positive response from it. I know you guys have had a lot of correspondence with law enforcement. Could you kind of touch on some of the efforts that you guys have had to help ensure that those regs are followed as best as we can do?
Yeah, for sure. Some of you may be aware that this last January, we had a detail with, I think it was 8 different law enforcement officers, and all 4 of us here at the district office. We went out and we went to, well, pretty much every lake in Omaha, and the wardens enforced their laws, and we were there along to answer any questions that people had. And so we know that these regulations at Flanagan are different. They're going to be hard to interpret for people, you know, not exactly sure what we're getting out there, or not exactly sure what the impetus behind it is. And so we're getting out trying to spread that information as best we can. But our wardens out there, they're doing everything they can to enforce these laws as well. They work incredibly hard. They got big districts to enforce. I mean, our average fishing trip length in the Omaha area, looking at creel surveys, is about an hour long. And, you know, we went out with these guys, and it took us all day to hit every lake in Omaha. So, I mean, if we hit Flanagan in the morning, but by the afternoon, there's a whole different crowd out there fishing. So even though you don't see them out there, they are out there. They're enforcing the laws. And a lot of the time, even though they're not talking to you, they do have places where they can watch over the lake without you guys necessarily knowing that they're there. So they are out there, they're enforcing the laws. And I think they're going to be paying a little bit more special attention to Flanagan and to Big Elk and Portal as well, with these new regulations and new fisheries going online.
Thanks, Jake. Along that same lines of, you know, the regulation of Flanagan, do you see any situations where these regs are implemented elsewhere in Southeast Nebraska? I think you mentioned of how long you're going to be kind of evaluating Flanagan, and when if you were to see them elsewhere, when might we see them elsewhere?
So that's a good question. It really kind of depends on how this goes. If we're seeing the effect that we want it to see, there's a good chance that we'd implement it at other reservoirs. It's not going to be, you know, every reservoir is going to be like this, or even you know, a lot of them, but there could be more of them that come online like that. Like I said, we'll be evaluating it for the next 5 years, but, you know, in the interim, you know, in the next 3 years or so, we're seeing really good results from it. We could implement it earlier. It just all depends on how it goes for the next few years there.
You also touched on the pike and those being catch and release.
Mm-hmm.
Do those pike help reduce panfish densities? You talked about that's kind of being the impetus behind everything, is reducing those densities.
Yeah, for sure. Those like I said, the high bass densities, the more predators that you can have in there to get on top of those panfish and keep them from overpopulating and, you know, stunting out the better. So the pike will definitely help us out there. The bass will help us out there, and then hopefully you guys, the anglers, will help us out there as well. All 3 of those that get predators combined, pushing down on those abundant size classes will hopefully have the effect that we want to.
Very good. Kind of a different way to maybe get at the same results. So some of the states south of here use a shared lunker program where, you know, they utilize anglers to, when they catch one of those larger specimens, transport it to a state facility and then try to pass those genetics on. Talk about thoughts and challenges of trying to implement a program like that in a northern state like Nebraska.
I mean, that's a good thought. And, you know, we've tossed that idea around a little bit. Typically our crappie and our bass take care of themselves in the lake, so we don't have to stock them. They naturally reproduce and do a good job at maintaining their populations. A share lunker program, especially for us, might be kind of difficult because there isn't a hatchery incredibly close to us. They'd have to be transported a ways, and anytime you're transporting any of those big fish, you know, those big fish are older, and the more stress you have on them, the more likely it is they're going to belly up on you. So trying to reduce stress on them any way possible is a better way of keeping them in the population. I like the idea though. I like the thoughts. Keep thinking of them, keep throwing them at us.
Very good. And then another question regarding when you're talking about the aging information that your guys are beginning to take on the bass. Is there any way that anglers or tournament anglers, because I know we have a lot of bass tournaments in southeast Nebraska, could possibly assist or provide any additional information to what you guys are already collecting?
You know, there could be opportunities for that. Not right now. When we collect this data, we do it during our standardized surveys, and that those are all standardized, so we can make comparisons year to year and lake to lake if we need to. So and I appreciate the offer, and I appreciate you guys being willing to help us out there and willing to work with us. But we'll continue collecting that data internally. But appreciate you being willing to help.
Kind of an observation that some of our neighboring states have different regulations. Our 21-inch bass reg is somewhat of a unique regulation around here. Is there a chance, especially with this black bass committee, that will go to a 15-inch minimum, or even something else as maybe a slot to help control pan, or that, and then utilize the anglers to control panfish?
Yeah, that's one of the possibilities that could come from this black bass management committee. It's some of the things that we've tossed around the office as well, and at meetings with other districts. It's hard to say what exactly is going to go into place right now, but it could definitely end up looking something just like that.
I can jump in just for a second too, Jordan, on that.
Yep.
That 21-inch regulation was initially put in to increase bass densities. So you had no harvest, essentially no harvest. Increase those bass densities, and then in turn have those bass prey on your panfish to increase panfish size. And it's worked well for that regulation. But as Jake just said, with some of this new work that's going to be being done here in the next few years, we're definitely going to look at a variety of different regulations that may or may not work, and try to do the best evaluations on those that we can. And there's on some of that, it's all what your management goal is for each lake. And so we'll be looking real hard at specific lakes and what regulations we think are going to produce the best results for what we want to see. So
thanks, guys. We're gonna share these poll results here and move on. We'll get to the other questions that popped up here towards the end. So as far as support for the regulations at Flanagan, at least amongst the folks present, overwhelmingly everybody is highly supportive, 98%. And as far as seeing these regulations at other lakes in Southeast District, again, overwhelmingly 91% would support that. And would you support regulation changes in Southeast District to increase largemouth bass size? Once again, overwhelmingly support that decision at 93%. So appreciate everybody participating there.
Okay, evening everyone. My name is Matthew Perry, and I'm also one of the fisheries biologists stationed here out of Lincoln, charged with managing lakes here in Southeast District. And for my kind of portion here, kind of to finish up this part of the presentation, I'll open it more to questions. Going to be looking at kind of our standard survey data for the last year. So basically all the work that we did out on the lakes targeting fish of certain species to get our standard survey results. I know that's something that's really popular with anglers, really popular with us too, kind of the fruits of all our labors, just to kind of see what the different species are doing in these area lakes. So kind of jump forward with that. One of the things that are also really popular, a lot of people are looking at that, is the if it'll go here, is the fishing forecast. And I was kind of laughing to myself when I saw I made the front cover there. So I always told Mom I'd be rich and famous one day. So it looks like all my dreams are realized with this one. So it's kind of interesting to see that. But so that's the cover that you're looking for. I also have that available at outdoornebraska.gov as well. But we have those in a lot of other places where you can buy bait and tackle. So look for that. We got a lot of good information in there. We also kind of make a little bit more focused survey results with the stuff that we do over the course of the year, just kind of like narrow in a little bit on a couple of areas specifically. So if you're primarily fishing in the Omaha area, we got an Omaha area specific fishing forecast that Jake made up there. And then I made the Lincoln area fishing forecast there on the left. So those are also available on outdoornebraska.gov. I know it can be a little difficult to navigate the website. And so, feel free to reach out to any of us if you need help finding where those things are located at. So I know a lot of people are really interested in those results as well as we are too. We're out there fishing with everybody else. So just kind of diving into a little bit more. Here's kind of the effort that we did in 2022 with our species specific focused surveys. So we surveyed 17 different lakes for bluegill specifically. And we do that in spring with our trap nets. Crappie, we do that in the fall again with trap nets, and we targeted 11 lakes for that. Largemouth bass, we use electrofishing nighttime for that. Did 19 lakes last spring, 15 lakes with fall gill netting for catfish, 8 lakes for walleye, and 2 lakes for saugeye. And we also use gill netting for that too. I don't know how familiar people are with some of the gears that we utilize, and so expended a lot of effort to collect this data just to get it out to all the anglers so you can have more focused fishing trips when you're looking for certain species. Then another thing I kind of want to touch on too, once I start diving into these results, is some of these lakes kind of have them on a higher priority, and so they get sampled every year. Some other lakes, we have them on like a 2-year rotation or a 3-year rotation. And so when I'm going through these different graph output results, if you don't see your favorite lake on there, it's not because we're neglecting it, it's just probably on a different rotation, and we didn't sample last year, but we might be going to it this year too. So feel free to reach out in the Q&A or target us specifically if you're curious about largemouth bass at a certain lake, and if you don't see them represented here in the graphs. So just kind of diving into this then. So this is our bluegill survey results that we did for last year, kind of focusing a little bit more on the Lincoln area. And just on the left side, of course, y-axis there, we got the list of area lakes there that we were sampling. The asterisk, that just denotes that they were sampled the previous year. And so we just kind of tried to bolster the graph a little bit to make it over a little bit more encompassing of the area lakes. And then the color denotes just the size length of the fish too that we sampled. And so people that are targeting larger bluegills, you know, if you're looking for bluegills over 8 inches, Conestoga would be a great place to be. I know I spent a couple of days there this winter along with most of Lincoln, probably taking advantage of that recent renovation. So the bluegills, the bite was great. It was really good to get out there and experience that for sure. So that was really good. And then some of the other lakes that we have, the higher proportion of those larger fish, Wild Plum, Hedgefield, with some other good places to go. And some lakes like Red Cedar and Checkland, they got a higher proportion of the population of some of those smaller size fishes. So probably have and improved catch rates, be great places to take kids or people that are interested in just higher catch rates. So I'll just kind of bounce through this. And so, yeah, I'll go from Lincoln area to Omaha area and then each species. So we'll just walk it down from there. So bluegills again in the Omaha area, sampled 4 lakes specifically there in Omaha last year for bluegills. And Jenny Newman, that kind of functions as a catch and release lake. And so it has a really good high proportion of those bluegills over 8 inches. I think there's some of that 9, 10 plus inch range too. So pretty good opportunity there to go and target some master anglerfish if you're interested and get some larger bluegills. Hopefully Flanagan will have similar results here in a couple of years with those new regs going into effect. Cunningham as well. We just finished up their recent renovation there as well. Caught some good rains that filled back up again, and so we're seeing some good abundances of bluegill in there as well. Again, that's still a developing fishery, so those fish are still growing. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the next time we're out there at Cunningham, you're seeing that good chunk of proportion of those fish over 8 inches as well. So just kind of a quick synopsis there of the bluegill in the Omaha area. Switching gears a little bit to crappies now, kind of in the Lincoln area, some of the lakes that we're focusing on. A lot of anglers that have been fishing Wanahoo for different species have probably noticed the high abundance of crappies in that 8 to 10 inch range. And so it'd be nice to see them continue to grow a little bit more too. And so kind of what Jake was alluding to as well with the northern pike and some of the other predators that we have available in Wanahoo as well. Hoping that they have an impact on those crappies a little bit. Some other lakes that would be good to target. Hedgefield, that's a really good one too. Smaller lake, so a little bit easier to find the fish. The condition of the fish was really nice too when we're out there. Remember that they're really thick. Make some good fillets for sure. Big Indian would be another good lake to target with a higher proportion of those fish in that 10 to 12 inch range as well. So lots of good crappie fishing to be had for sure. Looking at the Omaha area lakes for crappies. Zarinsky was kind of the ones where we had the highest abundances. We almost had about 50 fish per net. So of course we caught more than 50 crappies in the survey, but that was kind of our average per net. We were set multiple nets on the lake as we do with all our surveys. And so yeah, pretty good proportion, or 8 to 10, and then that 10 to 12 inch range too as well. We were doing some ride-alongs with some conservation officers this winter, and there were some people out there doing pretty well on the crappies at Zarinsky. Switching gears to bass. So yeah, we do springtime, nighttime electrofishing for these, and so this is number of bass per hour. And so we do 4 10-minute transects, and then based on that 10 minutes, we extrapolate that out per hour. And so it's basically just like an effort catching, and so we get a good index of abundance based on that we can compare to past years and future years as well too. Looking at this Black Bass Management Committee stuff that Jake was alluding to as well, something that we'll probably be looking at is kind of like some targeted, a catch per unit effort or abundances, like maybe if we want to look at maybe more of a trophy fishing opportunity, well, maybe we might have to look at some lower abundances to potentially like reduce some competition, increase some growth. So this be kind of interesting as we do more literature review. Yeah, we're constantly talking to other states and seeing what they're doing with their management programs as well, just to kind of make the best product moving forward with some of that committee research. Red Cedar is another one too. I think that's kind of a sleeper a little bit, but I know some people that are going out there and having some good success too with some of the larger bass that are coming on out there as well too. So. Looking at Omaha area, Prairie View, really high abundances out there at Prairie View, so it'd be a good time going out there angling for bass for sure. Should have some pretty good catch rates, but also a decent proportion of those fish over 15 inches. Two Rivers 1 was another one that we sampled out there as well. Two Rivers 3. So again, lots more Omaha area lakes with bass in them than these. These are just the ones we sampled in 2022. Looking at catfish, got a lot of great catfishing to be had in southeastern Nebraska for sure. And a lot of our recent renovations are kind of coming to the top too, like Conestoga that made the top list there for bluegills. And again, it's at the top of the list for abundances and kind of some of the size distribution in 2022 for our channel catfish surveys too. So really just kind of like proving point a little bit with those renovations and with the Aquatic Habitat Program and why we do it and why we take all the time and effort to improve the habitat, improve the water quality, because we just really see these big jumps in abundances and in the fishery as well post renovation. So it's really good to see that Conestoga. Branch Oaks holding its own as well, like it usually does. It's got great flathead catfishing and some really large blue catfish in it as well. And then Stagecoach, that was also another recent renovation, and there's some big catfish to be had out there. I caught a master angler without even trying there this past summer. So, and looking at Omaha area for catfish, Zernsky kind of moves to the top for channel catfish. We also spent quite a bit of time on the Two Rivers lakes doing our fall gill netting out there for catfish, as well as Walnut Creek. Switching gears now to walleye. Stagecoach again was kind of one of our more recent renovations, and yeah, it was really pleasantly surprised in the fall gill nets with the walleye catch rates that we had. We're over 10 per net, which is really good to see. And there's about fourth of the population out there at over 20 inches. I know I'm gonna be spending some time out there on the dam here in a couple weeks targeting the walleye for sure. Holmes Lake too. I know some people kind of roll their eyes at me when I tell them where to fish around Lincoln for different species of fish, but Holmes Lake really holds its own. There's some large walleye and some good bass and stuff to be had out there too. So got Omaha area. We had a really good catch at Walnut Creek too. Like we were all pleasantly surprised, I guess, or happy to see the advanced stockings really taking on there at Walnut Creek, and I had good abundances, over 15 walleye per net and some larger fish to be had out there too at Walnut Creek. So it's good to see. Along with some of our advanced walleye stockings, we also been doing advanced saugeye stockings, so hybrid between the sauger and the walleye that we do in the hatchery system. Literature kind of supports that they tend to do a little bit better in more turbid environments, and we definitely have that in some of our area lakes. And so we've been stocking those in a lot of our area lakes, and seeing some really good results from those too. Big Indian kind of jumps to the top. Willard Meyer would be a decent one to pursue too. Pawnee, they're actually growing really well at Pawnee. We spent some time out there this spring as well, and there's some really nice, over 25-inch saugeyes out there too. So that's master angler territory there. Kind of switching gears, that kind of finishes up the fishing forecast data a little bit. So this was another research project that I had been working on along with everybody else here in the district here for the last 2 years, just kind of in conjunction with our standard surveys, and just trying to kind of do the best we can with what we're given, I guess, and being as efficient and getting the best information that we can to make the most informed research and management decisions. And this was specifically with bluegills. And so we're looking at a couple different hard structures. JT kind of talked about a little bit, which is like, okay, we got anal spines, dorsal spines, scales, otoliths. Like let's look at them all and see what's giving us the most precise and accurate measurements or estimates for these fish so we can manage them properly. And so just kind of wanted to dive in that a little bit more and then compare the growth between our new reservoirs, newly constructed reservoirs, or renovated, and then some of our more established populations, and look at the growth between the two. So I kind of was talking about, just kind of two main objectives is just kind of look at that hard structure, aging, precision, and bias. We had a couple readers that would look at the structures, and then they would say like the age of the fish based on what they were reading, and we'd compare the accuracy and precision between the readers. And so we did scales and odorless for that, just to determine the most accurate, precise one, and then we would use that one to determine growth rates of the bluegill that we had between the two reservoirs. So our results, this graph is just kind of showing the percent agreement. So on the bottom of the graph, the x-axis there, PA, that's percent agreement. So that's how many times we were exact within the two readers, how many times we were in perfect agreement, and then got within 1, within 2 years, and so forth, moving to the right. And then percent agreement on the y-axis there on the left side. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor here at all, but odorless, white circles, we were exact almost 90% of the time, which is really, really great to see, really impressive. Whereas like scales, they've been used for a long time, for quite a few years, and we were at about 50% in agreement with those. And then within 1, we were almost 100% with the odorless. And so based on that information and a lot of other research, ongoing research that's been going on for the last 10, 20 years, we went with odorless for our calculation for our growth for bluegills. And then our results. And so as you can see here, the black dots, that's our recently renovated or recently constructed reservoirs within the district. And we had our established ones too. And so as you can see, they're kind of comparable at age 2, but then age 3, 4, they're significantly faster growing in those recently renovated ones. So just kind of adding more body to the evidence of why we do these renovations and see these improved growth rates within these reservoirs, and specifically for bluegills. And another thing to kind of note too, on the left side there, the y-axis, 200 millimeters, that's 8 inches or approximately 8 inches. And so people that are interested in making the SAE conversion there. And so we're kind of all surprised a little bit with just like the time it takes for a bluegill to get, you kind of operate under the assumption that some of these bluegills, they can get 8 inches. That's not that far, they can get there in 2 years, kind of a thing. We see that in some more of our natural sandhill lakes and stuff like that. But around here, it's about 4 to 5 years for a bluegill to get to 8 inches around here. And so that's all these things we're considering, when we're proposing those management regulations, specifically on Flanagan and stuff like that too, and just like knowing the growth rates and like how many years it'll take to get there. And so this is a lot of things that we're considering when we're discussing developing fisheries. So with that, I think that kind of finishes up my stuff. I guess I'll take questions, or I'll get it to Aaron here, I guess.
Yeah, I'll just hop on and again, this is our contact information. I don't think Jake and Jensen introduced themselves, but in our office here, there's myself and then Matthew, Jake, and Jensen. And so all of our information there, our work phone numbers, our emails, is all on there. We always tell people, if you got questions or you got comments, get a hold of us. My phone's, I'm sitting right by my phone all day. Give me a call. We're always more than happy to discuss fisheries management, the whys and whats, and what's coming on. We're just simply ask questions about where to go fishing or anything like that. Get a hold of us. That's what we're here to do. Again, just wanted to say thanks for tuning in. I know it's a little bit different format. Seems like anyway, it was pretty productive tonight, and I hope it was a little bit more interactive, and you guys felt like you were more part of this instead of just getting talked to. And so we appreciate it, and just want to say thank you and give us a call. So with that, Jordan, I'd say go ahead with whatever questions we got left.
Yeah, so we got our final poll questions up there. We're gonna, I know there's a ton of questions that are still on the Q&A. We're gonna get to as many of them as we can. We'll kind of just try to do rapid fire here. Couple of the very first ones, Aaron, could you briefly mention about hook limits on the umbrella rig and possibly ever getting that changed.
Yeah, I guess I don't see anything in the near future about changing our hook rigs. Some of that gets a little more difficult to change down the road. Right now, I guess I don't know what the percentage of our anglers that are throwing an umbrella rig is, but I would guess it's fairly small. I would say right now there's no plans. I never say never, but we don't have any plans in the near future looking at that.
Very good. What about a zebra mussel update in southeast Nebraska?
Well, thankfully, there's not a whole lot to update. You know, right now, we haven't had any new invasions. Like I said, my previous slides, the only place we have them right now in the southeast district is the Missouri River and Offutt Lake at the base there in Omaha. So right now it looks like everything's clean. We intend to keep it that way. We will be. We're currently hiring a bunch of aquatic invasive species staff. They'll be doing vegetation, looking at different vegetation in the lakes. They'll be doing veliger sampling, so basically zebra mussel, veliger and adult sampling, as well as a lot of different things. They'll be doing the typical boat inspections. You guys have been around some of the Salt Valley and Omaha lakes and got inspected last year. We'll be doing those inspections. So we're going to continue to keep at it. If you don't got them, you don't want them. So.
And I'll kind of jump in and reiterate what was suggested in the chat. Contact our aquatic invasive species program manager as well. If you have any specific questions about AIS, zebra mussels, that sort of thing, or want to know more information or have potential sightings, potential new infestations, we'd love to hear from you. Not under those circumstances, but definitely want to hear from you. And Chris is our man for that.
Are you going to stock yellow bass back into Standing Bear or any waters in southeast Nebraska?
No. Those yellow bass are pretty darn close to as bad of a fish species as what our white perch are. So that and the carp. I mean, there was a lot of things that went into the Standing Bear renovation, but removing that yellow bass population in there was one of them. So absolutely no plans to have yellow bass around here anytime soon.
Burchard's a pretty popular fishery, even given its distance from population centers. Can you touch on the water level issue down there and concerning the boat ramp as well?
Yep. Yeah, the water level is really low. It's again just the drought that we had. I think it's last I heard I think it's in that 4 to 5 foot low area. The ramp is a little bit of an issue right now. We're at the back of the ramp. If you're going to unload, you're at the back of the ramp. There's a little bit of a drop. There was new signage put up today just to make anglers aware. And there's some plans to get some rock in there at the bottom of that ramp. But like I said, across the whole district, but really across the whole state, we just need some rain here. And hopefully we get some this spring and not have to worry about it. That Burchard watershed is quite a bit different than what we see around Lincoln and Omaha. It's a lot of grassland. So it's good. It protects the fishery, but it also soaks up quite a bit of that rain. And so when we do get rains, a lot of that goes into the watershed and soaks into the watershed. So that's one reason I think that we see that impact there more than we do elsewhere.
Speaking of watersheds, there was a fairly significant fire in the Olive Creek watershed last fall. Any impacts you could potentially see to the fishery at Olive Creek?
We'll be watching it. I'm hoping, again, I just say we're talking about praying for all this rain. It was if anybody's been out to Olive, it's pretty impactful on that south side, you know, on the upper end of that watershed. I don't see any big impacts coming, but if we get a giant rain that pushes a lot of that material down into the lake, we definitely could see some issues arise. Don't know if there's any way around that. It's one of those, we'll just have to have a response ready if we get a fish kill or something like that. But hopefully we'll get a little rain, and that vegetation should come on pretty strong in that watershed, and it might actually improve things over time compared to what it is now.
I don't think you touched on it, but East Twin is on the docket for a renovation habitat improvement project. Any update on when that might
It's on the aquatic habitat list right now. And so that's one that we're looking at doing some work at here in the near future. I couldn't give you an exact date. I would say within the next 3 years, hopefully something will be getting done out there. Some of the bathymetric work, the lake depths that we looked at, that lake, along with a lot of our Salt Valley lakes, it's about 50 years old, 50 years old. They're 100-year dams, and it's pretty incredible the engineering that they did even back then. We're 50 years in, so we're half the life of the dam, and we're about 50% silted in on a lot of these reservoirs. And so this is one that's going to need some sediment removal. It's going to need some work putting in a sediment basin, and again, we'll do what we typically do on these rehabs, and hopefully it'll be back better than it's ever been.
Couple of questions about water levels at Carter Lake and any possible improvement projects concerning the boat ramp on the Nebraska side there.
Yeah, the water levels are really low at Carter. Again, that's a oxbow lake that functions hand in hand. It's kind of like our sand pits along the Platte River corridor. But when the Missouri River gets low, and as low as it's been here in the last year, you're definitely going to see those impacts. And there is a well that the city operates, but it just can't keep up. It's essentially just going right back down to groundwater and into the river. And so the city of Carter Lake is looking at some different plans to hopefully upgrade a well. We've been in a few of those meetings along with the Iowa DNR and some other entities. But right now, again, you need the river to come up. We need some rain. So as for the boat ramp, we know it needs some improvements. We were there here the last year or so on the boat docks and the ramps. And so we'll be working with the city of Omaha. I can't promise anything's going to get done anytime real soon, but it's definitely on the docket.
Somebody asked about wiper stockings in Zarinsky and how those wipers are doing.
You want to take that one, Matthew?
Yeah, I can dive into it a little bit. So yeah, we've been stocking wipers out there at Zarinsky for a couple of years now, and they're kind of a hard species to sample as far as the way of gill nets, and so it's a little bit difficult for us to kind of keep tabs on a little bit, but that's kind of where angler involvement is really important as we move forward with managing these fisheries. But we are getting reports of people going out and having quite a bit of success with the wipers. So they're definitely taking off and in the system for sure.
Question concerning blue catfish at Branched Oak. Any consideration or talk about some of the work you guys are doing, maybe not just at Branched Oak, but some of the other waters that have blue catfish as well, and any possible future regulations?
Jake, go ahead. You can kind of talk about some of the current stuff that we got going on this year with some anglers. Just maybe give them just an idea about what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So this year we have a couple of anglers that are going to have tagging guns on their boat with them, and they're going to be tagging some blue catfish for us as they catch them. And we're going to be out tagging them as well while we're sampling. Impetus behind this is we don't know a lot about the blue catfish in there. They're, for whatever reason, are an incredibly difficult species to capture out there. We shock it 4 times a year, targeting catfish, and we typically only see them in our June sampling. Some of you may have seen that video that we posted on Facebook, that of all those blue cats being caught. Those were out of branched oak, and some of the anglers came to us concerned about them, and we're wondering if there's any way we can help. And so we came up with this idea of tagging those fish so we could know how many of these big blue cats do we potentially have in there. Some of this was stemmed on by Kansas's research on Milford, where they tagged a bunch of their big blue cats. And what was originally thought to be a really robust population in there turned out to be people were catching the same fish 3, maybe 4 times. And so we think that might be what's going on with our blue cats. We are currently stocking them. They got stocked in 2021. They got stocked this last year, and they'll be annually stocked for the next 3 years as well. As far as a trophy rig being placed on them, we're probably not going to do that right now. We're going to wait till we have some more information on them. Blue cats, guys that do target them, you know, they're more difficult species to specifically target. And a lot of the people that are oriented around harvesting catfish don't typically target blue cats or are able to effectively fish for blue cats either. So as of right now, probably not a change on the harvest regulations on blue cats, but we are continually looking in on them. We monitor them at Pawnee as well, and that population is actually doing really well. They were originally stocked in 2016, so they're getting to be 6 years old, 6, 7 years old, and we got some over 20 pounds this last summer. So they're doing really well.
Just to piggyback on that, we do have about the most restrictive regs on blue catfish anywhere that you're going to find with a 1 fish bag. So not that a catch and release is going to make all the difference in the world, but and I know we always get the question about confusion with blue cats and channel catfish, and we get it, but right now we are pretty darn restrictive when it comes to blue cat harvest.
All right. This will be the last one, last kind of question, and then we'll share the poll results. So you guys mentioned about a brushing project coming up at Standing Bear in conjunction with the project there, and then kind of a piggyback along with that. There's another question asking, how can our anglers help? How can they volunteer? How do they know about these projects? So maybe discuss that, and then once you talk about that, we'll share the poll results and wrap up for tonight.
Yeah. So no, we really do appreciate you guys reaching out and wanting to help. That's been something we've noticed a lot here in the last few years. But as far as Standing Bear goes, you know, it's a little bit of a fluid situation out there between the construction and timing. But it'll probably be sometime in that June, July, where hopefully we start, even to August, where we start to dry out that lake bed again. A lot of it's going to depend on what we get for rainfall and how much room we got to work with. And that's something, you know, as we do these projects, when we need volunteers or we can work a project into the weekend, we typically use our Nebraska fishing page on Facebook to collaborate with our anglers and try to set some stuff up. That's what we did on our branched oak artificial habitat build. And I could see something like this similar if we don't have the manpower or we're going to need a little bit more. That's probably where you're going to get that information, is on the Nebraska fishing Facebook page. And the other thing is, if you're interested in volunteering or wanting to help on projects, send me an email and let me know. We kind of have a whole list of volunteers that we use for a variety of things. This week and next week, we're going to have over 60 volunteers on the boats to help with northern pike spawn at Flanagan and Wanahoo. And so We use volunteers throughout the year. It's a great time for us to be able to sit in the boat and talk with guys, and we appreciate the extra hands and saving our backs a little bit in spring and in the summer. So.
With that, Aaron, I might put a plug in real quick. We are probably could use some more help on the Flanagan and Wanahoo sampling next couple weeks. So if any of you watching out there are interested in helping, shoot me an email on here. We can see what we can do about getting you work into the schedule.
All right, very good, guys. Let me share the results with the crowd that's still with us here. So as far as our audience that uses the fishing forecast to help them guide their fishing trips, pretty overwhelming response they do. It's very good information that our field staff provides. As far as the more regional specific for Omaha and Lincoln, it's about 50-50. So I think maybe that's some work that we should do as far as making that a little bit easier to find for our anglers out there. And something new to the meeting this year is the interactive poll. We didn't quite know how that was going to go over with our audience, and I'm glad that it was yes. It could have easily gone the other way, and so 98% of you really enjoyed that. So that's good. That's something we were looking at, trying to get more in. So appreciate everybody's participation in that, and thanks.
Thanks a ton, Jordan, and the Southeast group. Yeah, there's a number of questions still in our Q&A. So if those weren't anonymously put in, we'll be able to email you back those questions. And then if they aren't addressed, if you had those, some of you did them anonymously, please reach out to us, the Southeast crew. In the fishing guide, once again, a great resource. There's all kinds of fisheries staff information in there, contact information. We're available to y'all all the time. It's part of our job to answer questions and help you, lead you down the right road. So appreciate everybody jumping on. Obviously we did this for 2 hours, and there's room for more time too, to keep on it going. We could do it all night, probably. It shows everybody's interest in this sort of thing and this fun pastime. So appreciate everybody from Game and Park staff, commissioners, and especially the anglers participating. It was really good. So
Yep.
Thanks
Thank you,
again.
everybody.